is the first BTO Sunday recap. Kevin Bunk, Mike Merlo. Normally this would be a live stream. This week it will not, but next Sunday and every Sunday at 7:30, we will be live right here on YouTube. You can also get it on Twitter/X for Sunday recaps. Today it's week 13 in the NFL, December 3rd. And Mike, let's not waste any time. Your thoughts on the absolute blowout in Philadelphia today. Niners backed up their talk for the last year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of players on that Niners team, a lot of people felt like if Brock Purdy doesn't get hurt in that NFC Championship game, they could have beaten the Philadelphia Eagles and gotten to the Super Bowl. I'm not that crazy. I don't think they would have won that game, but that game would have been a lot closer. They felt disrespected in the entire offseason. And listen, there was a point in time where the 49ers were banged up. They weren't playing their best ball. Philadelphia, obviously, we know what they've done this season. But to go into Philadelphia and smack them in the face the way they did, I mean, listen, you could have predicted the Niners to win by a touchdown. You could have predicted the Niners to win by 10 points. But for the Niners to do what they did in that game is just, it's incredibly impressive.
I agree with you, too. I'm glad you said that because a lot of people that I've spoken to have said, oh, well, the Niners would have won that game. I never thought that last year. I thought from the second that game started, Philly just ran away with it, even when Purdy was in for a drive or two. But Niners backed it up. They've been talking a lot. I haven't enjoyed the way that they've been treating that. I felt like they could have just let it go and be a little more professional about it. But how about Debo? I mean, he comes out 2 touchdowns, 2 big ones. He's just a wrecking ball all game, all season. And Debo comes out, backs it up. Does this concern you at all about Philly? Because it definitely does for me.
Their defense has definitely felt a little vulnerable the last couple of weeks. We saw Buffalo put up a ton of points against them. So, yeah, 100%. I mean, they're dealing with some injuries in the secondary. I feel like we've been saying that all season long. You could score on this defense, and clearly Debo and the entire San Francisco 49ers just did that all day. And you mentioned, all the crap that was going back and forth, after the game last year in the offseason and into this season. I felt like the 49ers were giving the Eagles way too much bulletin board material, and I was a little worried about that going into the game for San Francisco, but clearly it didn't matter because they just wanted this game.
Did you see this ejection with Big Dom?
Oh, my God. The fact that, listen, I don't think anybody should have gotten thrown out of the game, okay? The fact that Greenlaw got thrown out of this game is mind-boggling to me because Big Dom shouldn't be shoving a player on the field. That just should not be allowed. So that was a crazy situation, and a lot of people thought that was going to light a fire under the Eagles' ass, and it just didn't.
It absolutely went in the opposite direction. Losing Greenlaw. I will say, when I was thinking about this, what a payoff that was in the moment for Philly. Top 7 linebacker, and you lose. That's who San Fran loses. Top 7 linebacker, and you lose Big Dom. I mean, you would take that every single game. It didn't work out. It totally backfired.
No, Nick Sirianni lost his protection there, so they wouldn't trade that.
How about this guy on the sideline? I guess Philly fans know who he is. That's what it seems like. He's a kind of cult hero in Philly, even before this. He's on the sideline. He's got the Italian flag on the sleeve.
He looks like a mob boss. He looks like, a hit guy. Not even a mob boss, a hitman is what he looks like.
He's who I would want doing my security on the sideline. But yeah, this was a rough game. Purdy comes out, throws 4 touchdowns. You have to think, drop my pen. You have to think that the Eagles are the favorite after this one for Shaq Leonard. They absolutely have. I mean, and he's not even that good anymore, but they have to get something at that second level. They're soft as hell after that front 4.
Yeah, and, early on, that front 4 was getting after Purdy. I mean, Purdy couldn't do anything on those first 2 drives in that first quarter, and the Eagles went down the field twice, so it kind of looked like it was going to be one of those games that Philadelphia just dominated like we've seen in some other games this year, and it went the other way. I would agree. Shaq Leonard's probably going to be a Philadelphia Eagle. He said he's going to make his decision after this week's games. The first time I saw any mention of Big Dom was when Shaq Leonard got off the plane in the airport in Philadelphia, and Big Dom was escorting him to the facility. So they kind of link up here for me. I mean, that's the first time I noticed or heard about this guy.
Big week for Big Dom. Do you think that, and I'll see if you agree with me, I'll just say right away, I do think this San Fran easily the team to beat now. They most likely won't be the 1 seed. Because that's the records are right now. They have their 3 losses. But I don't think they will be. I don't think they will be because I think you got to think they'll lose a game the rest of the year, and so will everyone else. But right now, it's a tough time to not have 2 losses and try to be the 1 seed.
I think there's a chance. I believe Dallas is going to be Philadelphia next week. So let's just say that happens and San Francisco wins. I don't know who they play next week, but then they have the same record. If San Francisco wins next week, Philadelphia loses. Now they're 10-3, both of them, and obviously San Francisco has the head-to-head. I think this game was obviously was going to kind of give the edge a little bit. It would be tough, but I think they definitely have a shot at it.
But then you have to factor in Detroit also, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But Detroit also 2 losses. So they got an easier schedule than everybody else. They've had one the whole year. We'll talk about Detroit in a little bit. Let's move on, though. AFC. This was, maybe you call me biased to the AFC. This was the game I was most excited for today, was Houston and Denver. I wanted to see if the Broncos could keep it going. Russ, 3 interceptions. He's your boy, so I'll let you start it off again. Your takeaways here.
This was an elimination game. Excuse me. The loser of this game was not going to make the playoffs, and still, the Texans win this game. They don't even hold the playoff spot in the AFC right now. So this was a tough game for the Broncos. You cannot turn the ball over 3 times. That last interception inside the 10-yard line for Russ it's obviously a backbreaker. It loses them the game. Just throw that ball completely away. Give yourself a chance on 4th down. Wasn't overly impressed with anybody in this game. It was sort of ugly in a way. But listen, the Texans, they're just so well coached. And when you have a quarterback like CJ Stroud, a franchise quarterback, that no matter what, the roster is not great. The weapons aren't great, even though Nico Collins has been underrated for a while. And now CJ Stroud's finally starting to bring out, the stardom. I believe in him. The roster is not great. A guy like him masks everything and makes everybody better. So Stroud is good enough to get the win. And they could see potentially in his first year make the playoffs.
So I agree with you. Nico Collins, what a massive day, first of all.
Yeah.
9 for 191, found the end zone. Tank Dell, hurt. You know more about that than I do. I haven't really kept up on it.
Yeah, I saw fractured leg, I think.
Oh, yeah, fibula, I think it was. Fractured fibula.
Let's see. I'm going to just do a quick search on Twitter. Fractured fibula. Yeah.
And myself, as a fellow world-class athlete, I have fractured my fibula once.
Really?
And it's not weight-bearing. So I don't know if anybody remembers, but Cole Beasley played the postseason with a fractured fibula. I think with a broken fibula. And it's just because I think it just hurts more, but you can still run. You can still walk without any further damage.
Were you able to keep playing?
Yeah, I was able to still play basketball with a fractured fibula. So basketball, football, all right, high school basketball and NFL football, 2 totally different things.
I don't know. It's close, Kevin. It's real close.
I mean, Tank Dell, Kevin Bunk, similar athletes, but the 2 sports, the 2 settings, very, very different. Stinks, though. Tank Dell having a great rookie year. They got something special there with Collins, Dell, good running back room, Stroud, and a great coaching staff. So this is a big win for them. I think this was their big win of the season because Denver was not to be underrated. They could have came into this game and won what would have been their 5th straight or their 6th straight.
I think they're 6th. I think
it was 6.
Yeah.
Could have won their 6th straight. Houston takes care of it. Houston gets an easy layup game next week to bounce back against the Jets, who are just absolutely dead. So easy layup game for Houston. And now they're in that spot where they can make that playoff push. I'd love to see Stroud and Houston in as a 6 or 7 seed down in this first season of this new era. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, win next week. They're 8-5. The Steelers at 6, they have 7-5, and the 7th spot you have the Colts, who are a great story as well with their backup quarterback. I agree, though. I think the better story here for the NFL is CJ Stroud in his rookie year. I would love to see CJ Stroud in there, and he deserves it. He just played amazing. Every time I watch this guy, there are just moments where I'm like, this kid's a rookie. And even today, when he didn't play his best game, and you just sit there and say, wow, this guy's a rookie, and it's just very impressive.
He is. He feels like he's been on the job for 6 or 7 years now. Yeah. Awesome pick. Too bad he failed that whatever test, the Wonderlick or whatever it's called, out of the draft. One of the worst minds of all time coming into the league. Doesn't look great now, though, for the Wonderlick test. Let's go to New Orleans. Saints, Lions. Lions up 21-0. They end up only winning by 5 points, 33-28. Now, I think that this one is a little concerning for Detroit.
Yeah.
I don't love how it fares them, especially when you watch what San Fran did today. This is a discouraging win for the Lions.
I don't think you'll ever see Dan Campbell. I mean, you watch these videos of them in the locker room. You'll never see Dan Campbell after a win, especially on the road, say, this is a discouraging win. But I think for us, looking at this game, I would absolutely say it is. I mean, this defense, anybody could score on this defense. And if the Saints, who were just absolutely terrible in the red zone against the Atlanta Falcons a week before, the Saints can score in the red zone at ease against this Detroit Lions team, that's an issue. The Saints are just putrid, and they're able to come back in this game after being down 21-0. I would have legitimate concern if I was a Detroit Lions fan right now, just looking at the way this defense has played offensively. We know they could score with anybody for the most part. I'd love to see them play a really great defense. The Saints defense is not playing at that level right now, so I wouldn't count this one as even a good defense they played today, but definitely a little bit of concern blowing that lead and almost losing this game.
Right now, for me in the NFC, there are 4 teams that I definitely would take to beat Detroit in Detroit. San Fran, Philly, and Dallas are the easy 3 that I think would beat them. I also think, and people can call me crazy because now it doesn't even look like they're going to be in a playoff spot, I think Seattle could go in and beat this team as well. I've been very high on Seattle all year. I'm so crazy and brain dead that I picked them to go to the Super Bowl before the season on the playbook. That's a really bad look now. It's aging horribly. But I don't know. I don't think they're a top 4 team in the NFC. And I think that any team that can put up points with them, they are not able to beat.
Kevin, I had the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game, so you're not alone.
All right.
I think
Mike, if I had the same pick as you, it makes me feel terrible about my pick.
I think Seattle's fraudy. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, and I don't think they can go. I mean, they did go to Detroit and beat them in week 2, I think it was.
Yes.
But if they had to do it again, I don't think they would. I agree with you, though. Those 3 teams, I think, are in a different class than Detroit at this point. I wouldn't even consider picking Detroit to win the NFC over any of those 3 teams you mentioned. They're going to play Dallas in a couple of weeks. I think they're going to get killed in that game. I think it's going to look like a kind of, I don't know if you remember when Dallas went to Minnesota last year, when Minnesota had the better record and they won 40-3. I think that's what that game's going to look like in a couple of weeks. And just speaking of Minnesota, I think, and this might sound like an overreaction here, I think Detroit, is Minnesota's team last year. I think this is kind of that team. They're a little fraudy, and defensively, they're clearly not good enough. That was Minnesota's problem last year, and we knew Minnesota could score with most teams last year. They won these close games. Detroit is this year's Minnesota Vikings.
All right, so there's your overreaction for the day. Every week, we'll give you an overreaction each from what we just witnessed. I think you're right because that defense is just not there. And you know that they have good coaching staff in place, very similar quarterbacks, Cousins and Goff, as far as tier where they're at. I think they play different, stats are different, but very similar in ability. A lot of playmakers. Last year it was Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and over in Detroit, you have Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery as a very nice tandem, and then Laporta, also Hawkinson on Minnesota. So very similar teams. St. Brown, very, very similar.
Light schedule, the domes.
Poor defenses.
Yep.
And it's just the class of the NFC, it's Dallas, Philly, and San Fran, and there's such a significant drop-off after that. I don't have nearly enough confidence in any team behind them. I just compared them to Seattle, who's in 3rd place right now in the NFC West.
And gun to my head, if I had to pick a team to win the Super Bowl, it would be one of those 3 teams you mentioned. I would say the NFC wins the Super Bowl over the AFC, which we thought so much of, and clearly a lot of injuries have, changed our view on what the AFC looks like and just teams not playing well. But those 3 teams in the NFC are some of the NFL's strongest.
Well, the AFC, it's a great point because the AFC has 8 or 9 teams that I think could go to the conference championship if they made the playoffs. I could see any of them going. But besides Kansas City and maybe Baltimore right now, I don't think any of them can stay in a game with San Fran or Philly. And I think Dallas would still beat them in close games.
This could have been my overreaction too. I am not going to quit the Miami Dolphins. I think the Dolphins can get to the Super Bowl if it breaks right for them in certain matchups to get to Kansas City in the AFC Championship game and then possibly beat them, because I was impressed with what they did against them in Germany.
They can. And also, Tyreek Hill right now has to be the MVP frontrunner. Another massive day.
That could be your overreaction right there.
I don't think. Is there a quarterback in the mix with him?
I'd say Purdy. I think you could even say Dak at this point. with the way Dax played.
And then
I think
McCaffrey, if I'm putting Hill in, McCaffrey also has to be
yes.
in the mix. He's just as good. That's why I can't go Purdy, because I think McCaffrey's even more valuable.
Well, how about this? If we're just talking in terms of value, how about Deebo Samuel? This team does not move the same way without Deebo Samuel, and then you see them against the best team in the NFC, best team in the AFC in quotation marks, and he plays this great, and they blow them out.
It's funny with San Fran. You could do that with Trent Williams. You could do it with Nick Bosa. I could do it with Fred Warner.
Yep.
I mean, do it with anyone. They're loaded.
Yep.
They're loaded. All right, let's move on to a game that was not quite like the rest today. Chargers win 6-0 in Foxborough. Utter disaster. Two of the worst coaches going right now, which will lead into my overreaction in a moment. 5.5-point spread. Chargers scored 6 points, and they covered it.
If you pick the Patriots, which was the sharp side in terms of gambling here, I was not one of those people because they're on the list for me, the New England Patriots, but you just got to be kicking yourself because you essentially won this game. The defense did everything they could to cover this spread and actually give you a chance to win. I have nothing to say. This is disgusting. Bailey Zappi. You know, what's funny? I was reading this tweet from this Boston, I think he works for the Boston Globe. The offense actually looked more efficient with Bailey Zappi running it. And you could tell, even though they didn't score any points, because the bar is so low right now with this team offensively. I mean, they're the first team since 1938 to give up 10 or less points in 3 straight games and lose all 3. It's a different kind of low right now for the New England Patriots. Lower than your New York Jets, Kevin. Seriously.
The reason, I don't even want to talk about them, Mike. The reason that I put this game in, because we both, when we discuss what we want to talk about on Sunday night, we put our games in and the obvious one. So the reason I put this one is to lead into my overreaction, which is that 10 or more, at least 10 head coaching jobs will be open this offseason. So I have the list right here. Frank Reich and Josh McDaniels are already gone. Possibly yes. Antonio Pierce is already in that role with a strong finish. Okay. Don't think so, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Mm-hmm. Matt Eberflus in Chicago. There's your third opening. Belichick in New England. That's your fourth. Staley, Chargers, 5th opening. Dennis Allen, 7th. Ron Rivera, 8th. Todd Bowles, 9th. I don't think any of those guys survive. And the 3 wild cards that I have. Sean McDermott, if Buffalo misses the playoffs.
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel, who I love. And Robert Saleh if the Jets lose out. So those right there, that is 12 coach openings with 3 question marks included. So you have at least 9 guys that I'm very confident. I'm very confident 9 jobs will be open, but it'll probably be 10.
See, I wish we were at a situation or at a point where we could put McDermott on the list of he should get fired, because I believe McDermott should be fired if they miss the playoffs this year. I can't get there with Saleh. I think Aaron Rodgers is running the show there, and he wants Saleh there. But, I mean, if you lose out and you're 4-13 and, you know, it just continues to get worse, Woody Johnson might not have a choice. What was the other wild card? Oh, Vrabel. Vrabel gets hired in a second, I think, in a lot of places. If they fire Vrabel, that would be an absolute big-time mistake.
So, hypothetically, they fire Mike Vrabel. How many of those coaches that are in right now could possibly get sent back into the cycle? Belichick, Vrabel are the obvious 2.
Yeah.
Not both of them would be head coaches next year somewhere else unless they decided to take a year off or retire.
Agreed.
But out of the other guys, it's a really bad crop. Reich and McDaniels, no chance. Eberflus, no way. Staley, no way.
No
Dennis
way.
Allen, Ron Rivera, Todd Bowles, no way. Saleh, maybe, if that happened. And McDermott probably would land somewhere.
Yeah. McDermott's the only other guy. I think Saleh might. Saleh might, just because an owner might say, well, he hadn't really had a fair shot. Excuse me. He didn't have a fair shot. He didn't have a real chance. So maybe Saleh.
Well, here's a solid job that would work. If you went to the Chargers, if the Chargers, because of Dean Spanos, can't attract a guy like Belichick or Vrabel because it's just such poor ownership, you can't attract a guy like that, you could say, all right, Saleh, you can come coach here, but Kellen Moore has to stay. Or in Washington, if they wanted to say Eric Bieniemy has to stay. You have to love your OC, and the OC has to agree to pair him. So a lot has to go into hiring a guy like Saleh.
I think the idea is correct. I don't think those situations are correct because I would just in those situations I would just hire Kellen Moore. I would just
Very
hire
fair
Eric
point.
Bieniemy. But 100% I agree with what you're saying. I think in any case when you're hiring a defensive coach, unless they're like an elite defensive guy that you really trust and like they're going to be a great head coach, and there's really never a situation like that. If you hire a defensive coach, that offensive coordinator position is so important, so you almost have to get that right. So in any scenario, I want that offensive coordinator hire to be a big one. But yeah, in Saleh's case, absolutely, you need to have the offensive coordinator almost in place by the time he gets there.
All right, so let me ask you this one too, not to go on this whole head coach conversation, but for us, before we move on and head into Monday, which is usually a misery Monday, not a victory Monday, which job would be the most attractive? Carolina, Vegas, Chicago, New England, LA, New Orleans, Washington, Tampa Bay.
I think the Chargers are the most obvious one to be attractive just because you have Justin Herbert. You have weapons there. If I'm an offensive coach, I want to get my hands on Justin Herbert and try and mold him. The other sneaky one, and I don't want to steal it from you if you're going to say it, the Commanders. They're going to have draft picks. They're going to have a ton of money to spend, and they have a very aggressive owner that wants to make big moves.
What about Chicago? Chicago,
Yeah.
first pick in the draft, maybe the 5th or 6th pick in the draft. I think the other two are more attractive.
But you have the chance to you're going to get a franchise quarterback and then you're going to get a legit cornerstone player. So, yeah, 100% I would agree with that.
All right, and then another one for you. I didn't want to include it as a wild card because I think he's doing a terrific job this year. If the Cowboys lost in the first round of the playoffs, could Jerry Jones fire Mike McCarthy and try to get Bill Belichick?
I don't know if you go get Bill Belichick, but I think he's – you know what? No, because I always thought when Sean Payton was available, that was the move they would make.
I thought so too.
I don't think he'd go get Belichick. I don't know if he'd fire him, though. I think last season, if they would have lost to the Bucs, he would have been fired, and Sean Payton would have come in. But I don't think at this point they're going to fire McCarthy, even with a just embarrassing loss in the first round.
All right, Mike, any final Sunday thoughts?
No, I'm glad I didn't have to watch the Giants play. That's about it.
Giants win, fans win when they don't play.
Yeah, exactly.
Jets fans lost today, though. Miserable game. Hopefully we'll talk about one of those two teams next week if they make it relevant. See you next Sunday, 7:30 live on YouTube. Top left of this video, you can find all of our handles. Also, Mike from Hardline Sports Talk, of course. You can find me at The Playbook. Check out our accounts, though. You'll find all the information you need for the others there. This Sunday, Week 13 of the NFL, we're signing off. Catch you next week for Week 14. Thanks for watching.